The Florida Panthers won their first ever Stanley Cup on Monday, in the franchise's 30th anniversary season. While the Panthers had an unflattering road to get there in the end, they did, in fact, get there in the end. Driven by an incredible ability to keep the puck out of their net when it mattered most, against some of the league's very best offensive forces, Florida stormed their way to 16 wins in 24 games. After years of trying and falling short as competitors, the franchise finally reached their ultimate goal. The Panthers have been consistently competitive, yet still completely different each of their recent seasons. Their results have steadily improved year over year, leading them to cracking their championship formula to take home their first ever title in 2024. Today, we look at how the Florida Panthers slowly but surely transformed their franchise into a perennial contender and, eventually, a Stanley Cup champion. Over the past 3 seasons, the Florida Panthers have been among the most competitive teams in the NHL. And yet, each and every year, their roster, their style, the way they win, has been completely different. First, they were an offensive juggernaut, led by the highest single-scoring season in Panthers history by Jonathan Huberdeau. They brought in Claude Giroux, Ben Sherratt, and won the President's Trophy, entering the playoffs as championship favorites. But that didn't work, and so they adapted. By the start of next season, Jonathan Huberdeau was gone, Mackenzie Weegar was gone, head coach Andrew Brunette was gone. The Panthers changed the core and structure of the organization, angling themselves more towards a traditional championship roster archetype. That angle failed them in the regular season, at least compared to the previous year, because they were the lowest seeded team to make the playoffs in 2023. But led by an unbelievable run from Sergei Bobrovsky along with new core superstar Matthew Tkachuk, the Panthers got about as close as they could to the ultimate goal, reaching the Stanley Cup Finals. 2023 proved that the Panthers were capable of going all the way with their setup. Even with major injuries to many of their stars, they got to the finals. They had built a base that works in the playoffs, and just needed to get back there in order to take another run at it. Evan Rodrigues and Oliver Ekman-Larsson headlined depth additions made in the offseason, and once the Panthers were back among favorites at the deadline, they opted for a more low-key option, paying a light price to bring in Vladimir Tarasenko. The offensive capabilities of Florida's stars and depth, and the defensive system of the team reached their full potential in the playoffs, and that put the Panthers in a position in which they were capable of shutting out the likes of McDavid and Draisaitl on the biggest stage in the world. The finishing touch on the years of planning, scheming, tinkering, and altering, the 2024 Stanley Cup. Recognizing the flaws and adjusting them is a crucial part of building a championship team, but those adjustments can only be made in service of that goal if the team's core is strong. The Florida Panthers might not have the single most talented core group of any team in the league. However, they very well might have the most playoff-built core in the entire NHL. Matthew Tkachuk, for example, plays a very traditionally playoff style. He's chippy, he's aggressive, he's physical. But he's also phenomenally skilled, more so than almost any other winger in the NHL. Very few players share the playstyle and skill of Tkachuk, making him a unique asset that only the Panthers have to build around. He's built for the playoffs, and he performs in the playoffs. Each of the last 2 seasons, he's been the Panthers' leading playoff scorer. Carter Verhaeghe is another playoff riser. It feels like every goal he's scored over Florida's past 2 runs is in an absolutely crucial situation. He eliminated the 65-win Bruins in overtime in 2023. He scored the winner in the Panthers' only win in last year's final. He scored the first goal in this year's final. And he scored the first of only 3 goals in the must-win Game 7. Carter Verhaeghe turns up when it matters, scoring big goals in big games. Alexander Barkov is a little more subtle than Tkachuk or Verhaeghe, but the world came to recognize his greatness over this playoff run. He's not typically visually dynamic in the way those two can be, and yet he's the best player on the Panthers. Everyone knows about Barkov's skill set as the player that's set to succeed Patrice Bergeron as the perennial Selke Trophy winner. But this Cup Final series also shines some more light on his other skills, like his ability in transition. Of all the Panthers' stars, Barkov was the best when it mattered most, playing excellent hockey in every game of the Stanley Cup Finals. That's 3 star forwards, all of whom are crucial members of Florida's core and all of whom raised their games to another level in the playoffs. That's without even mentioning Sam Reinhart, who scored 57 goals in the regular season and the Game 7 Cup Final game winner. Or their baby Barkov they have helming the middle six. Or the other chippy, aggressive, playoff-built guy in their top 6. They've got the same story on the defensive end. Each of Florida's past 3 seasons, they've had a different defender raise their game and step into that number 1 role. In 2022, it was Aaron Ekblad, who broke out to a career year. In 2023, it was Brandon Montour, stepping up to take the most ice time and score the most points from the blue line. And in 2024, Gustav Forsling was getting all the praise for exceptional defensive skill, along with some solid scoring. Despite the changes, all 3 defenders are still Florida Panthers in 2024. All 3 have adapted and redefined their roles year over year, ultimately finding the form that suits the team best for success. They've found the best way to protect Bob, although it's not like they've even really needed to do so over much of their last 2 playoff runs. Because out of all of Florida's playoff risers, Sergei Bobrovsky may be the biggest one. The reason that the Panthers made the finals in 2023 was Bobrovsky, who was absolutely dominant once he took over the crease in the first round. Similar things can be said about 2024. Bar a few games here and there, Bobrovsky was excellent. If not for McDavid's all-time run, Bobrovsky would have had a strong case to take home the Conn Smythe. And, after adding a Stanley Cup to his already stacked resume, Sergei Bobrovsky is a surefire Hockey Hall of Famer. To put it simply, Florida is just built for the playoffs. Their stars raise their game, and the rest of the team and their stats reflect that. Bill Zito and the rest of Panthers management adapted to their past failures. One of their biggest changes was bringing in Paul Maurice, who was able to establish a defensive system that made the Florida Panthers 2024 Stanley Cup champions. Maurice's style is built for the playoffs, as proven by his 5-0 record in Game 7s, along with, of course, the Stanley Cup. When it mattered most, he was able to get everyone on the team going. They fought through everyone, beat the best of the East and the best the West had to offer. Each series they came away looking like the better team, and they ultimately proved their status as best in the league in 2024. The Panthers' path to getting to their franchise's first Stanley Cup wasn't as simple and easy as it may seem on the surface. Yes, they won the President's Trophy and reached a Cup final in the past 2 seasons. But both of those were very different teams from the champions of today. In that same multi-year stretch, Florida's added the likes of Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Reinhart, while subtracting players like Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, and Mason Marchment. Players like Sergei Bobrovsky and Gustav Forsling, for example, look completely different to how they did those seasons ago. The team used to be dead set on outscoring their problems, but when that didn't work, they adapted to a more traditional playoff style, and that did work. The Panthers get to bring the Stanley Cup back to Florida themselves for the first time ever in the wake of one of the most popular finals games of all time. An impressive win that will hopefully continue to elevate the franchise and hockey as a whole within the state and country over the coming years.